Live from Oklahoma City here in the press box. It's in the circle live at the Big 12 Championships. Eric Lopez alongside Ashton for D1 softball. We're going to be here all week covering this incredible tournament and in this great championship beginning tonight. In about an hour, Kansas will take on Houston in the 7-10 game. That'll be followed by Iowa State taking on Texas Tech. And then, of course, quarterfinal Thursday, we got 4 games starting with Oklahoma State taking on BYU. We'll have coverage from right here all week. We're in the press box. I'm going to bring in Ashton because he's the veteran. This is his third Big 12 tournament you've covered. Give us an idea of the scenery here. For Devon Park, it's the new name for the stadium. But what's it like to be here as we're about an hour from starting the Big 12 tournament?
Yeah, like Eric just said, Red O Genie Field here at Devon Park, the new name for the stadium here. And boy, it's great weather. Looks very pretty outside. It's not very Oklahoma-y as an Oklahoma native. But yeah, I mean, we're shaping up for a great weekend of softball. 2 very intriguing matchups tonight, 4 intriguing matchups tomorrow, and then from there on, I mean, it'll only get better. The grounds crew's been working ever since we got here, making the field look really nice. And it looks like we're going to have a great weekend of softball, not only because of the field, but because of the teams we got here, Eric.
Describe, this is your third Big 12 tournament. Describe what's it like on a game here at the Big 12 tournament at this stadium. What do people can expect to see this week?
Yeah, I mean, the best way I can describe it is it's very Women's College World Series-esque, and not only because we're in the same venue, but because we have a lot of the similar teams that kind of come around here, the big fan bases, Texas, OU, OSU. They're all pretty regional, and since we're in the middle of the country with anywhere from UCF to Iowa State to anywhere, Houston. I mean, when you have all these teams that can come to the middle of the country, fans are easily able to travel here, and so you get awesome crowds here, awesome crowds. And like I said, since some of those local teams are the dominant ones for sure, it becomes very Women's College World Series-esque to where the fans really get into it, and by the later days in the tournament, it really starts to get live here in Oklahoma City.
Let's talk about we're going to talk about some of the storylines in this week's tournament, then we'll talk about what's going on elsewhere nationally. But what's a couple things you're looking forward to seeing this week, if not tonight, this week?
Well, I mean, tonight in particular, it's a lot of high-stakes softball. Teams that are either fighting for their season to continue and stay alive, or it's teams that are fighting to get off that bubble and secure a postseason spot. As we go into tomorrow, teams like Oklahoma State trying to avoid a Bedlam hangover, right? Matching up a team against BYU, a gritty team that looks really good against some high caliber teams. And then you keep going into it, and you want to see if Texas can win the Big 12 tournament along with the regular season title. If OU can have a bounce back from last weekend, right? I think that from the top down, it's not just the top couple of teams that are really interesting here. It's 1 through 10 truly, and we're going to see 7 through 10 tonight. Like I said, 2 really intriguing games that are high stakes softball. So that's what I'm really excited for. Just we have high stakes everywhere for one reason or another.
Let's get into each game. Let's start with this Kansas-Houston game. Kansas was a team a month ago as a lock for the NCAA tournament. Where it's in the top 25 at one point and has just kind of fallen off a cliff. They've lost 10 in a row coming into this Big 12 tournament, Ashton. You saw a couple weeks ago they were against Oklahoma State, had the lead in 2 of those games, couldn't hold it. They lose a game to Kansas City, and then on senior weekend they get swept by BYU. And I think right now, at least on my bracketology, which you can follow on D1 Softball, we're going to have a bubble watch all week long on D1Softball.com. But I have Kansas right now on the outside looking in. They got some work to do to get back in. And this is a veteran senior group that's trying to – their goal was to get to the tournament. It's been stunning to see this fall from Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, a very veteran group, an experienced group. And with the way that they started the season, you wouldn't have thought that they would have been on the bubble like how you have them projected to be. I mean, they seem not necessarily a shoo-in, but that they would have a very high chance of, not having to come to the Big 12 tournament here in Oklahoma City and struggle and worry about them having to win a couple games to get in, right? And 10-game losing streak, obviously not where you want to be in softball and baseball and any diamond sport. The hot teams, you always want to be hot going into the postseason. And like you said, in particular, the Oklahoma State series, I mean, I watched that firsthand. Two missed opportunities of games that would have been huge for their resume, huge for their RPI. But that's what it seemed like so far this back half of the year. They haven't been able to capitalize on moments that could improve their resume and would get them off of the bubble and I have them playing for their postseason lives here tonight in Oklahoma City.
We'll send your questions and comments. We'll read them before we go off the air. We'll go off the air a few minutes before the start of the Kansas-Houston game. It'll be interesting how Kansas comes out early in this game. Do they put all that negativity and struggles behind them and start fresh? That's always the approach a lot of coaches have at these conference tournaments. It's a fresh new season outlook. I'm really curious to see how Kansas comes out early. Do they come out loose and play freely, or are they playing up tight and you're seeing a couple of miscues, Ashton? I think that's something to watch early in this game.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a sense of jitters, right? Especially when you're playing for something that may not be past this weekend. You're playing for your season, right? I mean, there's naturally going to be some jitters, but I think that has to be the message going into it, is to try and avoid those jitters and to try and just come in, release everything. The 10-game losing streak does not matter. This is the third season of softball. There's fall ball, there's the regular season, and then there's this. And so I think if you go in with that mindset of, hey, we have nothing to lose. Everybody's competing for the Big 12 title just like how we are. The regular season title's over. It's just 10 teams in the tournament, and if we get out of here, we can definitely make a run in the postseason.
And, of course, Houston had a tough year, first year in the Big 12, 4-23 in conference, but they did pick up a win against Texas, and they could swing the bats a little bit. And that's going to be something to watch early, is can Houston get some offense going against Kansas is pitching in their new season here. Their first ever game for Kristen Vesley's and the Cougars. Kristen Vesley, a former Oklahoma Sooner, played in the Big 8, loves this conference. It's been a big rebuild, quite frankly, for Houston.
Yeah. I mean, like you just said with Coach Vesley, though, I think even though this has been a big rebuild, they definitely have some potential in the future. Like you said, even in this inaugural season in the Big 12, they've had some good moments. They have some bats. They have some players that can play very, very high-level softball. And, I mean, when you come from a background like Oklahoma, even though you're in a different situation at Houston, you're bringing in a winning culture. And so I think that the Cougars could really well be set up for a good run in this tournament, more so than people are expecting, because of from the top down, they have leadership that knows what it takes to win in this tournament and in these kind of settings, Eric.
The second game, following 30 minutes after the conclusion of Houston and Kansas, will be Iowa State and Texas Tech. Ashton, I think I'm fascinated by this game because Texas Tech I have as one of the last four in my bracketology. Yeah. They're coming off a rough weekend against Texas, who just was on fire. So this is a big game for Craig Snyder against a Jamie Pinkerton Cyclones team that is, pesky. They're always kept ready to play in conference and in the conference tournaments. You know all about that.
Yeah.
Last year's an example, taking games from Oklahoma State. They took 2 out of 3 from Oklahoma State this year. It names Iowa. They just took a game from UCF. So this is a dangerous game and a big game for Texas Tech to really not afford that. I don't know if they can afford to lose this game and stay on the right side of the bubble, because then you're going to have to hope for a lot of things beyond your control to go your way. I'm really intrigued to see this matchup.
Yeah, if I were the Raiders, I would not want to be seeing a Cyclone team like that. Like you said, they know how to play up in big games. Even though they might not have the most talented roster that some of these other top teams do, they know how to play up. Like you said, they took 2 from Oklahoma State this year. They took 2 from Oklahoma State last year. They know how to play well at home and away, which should serve them very well here on a neutral site. And according to your bracketology, Texas Tech, more so than anything, needs to win tonight to secure a spot in the postseason, to be sure. Because if they lose tonight, then they're going to need some help from other teams to make sure that they get in that field.
What's funny is we don't really know how these 2 teams match up because they didn't play this year.
Yep.
This was the series that was supposed to be played in Ames, Iowa. They got snowed out. And it's hilarious that they're going to end up playing here in the Big 12 Championship. That could have hurt Texas Tech, because both teams really. Because I think both teams feel if they win that series, maybe they have a shot at the top 6 seed. Instead, BYU got that 6th and final spot. So that's the interesting thing, is these 2 teams have not played. Both can hit. Pitching is going to be interesting. Both teams have had some issues pitching-wise. Iowa State with some injuries, depth-wise. Texas Tech as well. Could be a really an offensive shootout we might see here.
Yeah, no doubt. And surprisingly, we're getting some better weather than Ames, Iowa had with that snow. It looks great here. It looks good weather, too, for an offensive shootout, like you just said. But, yeah, very, very interesting because of that, too. I mean, both teams are coming with interesting storylines. But I think that since we haven't seen a backstory, a background of how they match up and how they play against each other, that just makes it even more interesting, Eric.
So that will be the second game tonight. Between Iowa State and, of course, Texas Tech. Big postseason ramifications. Not The Cyclones is certainly a tricky team that you don't want to see with your season on the line.
Right.
We'll get to some of the other storylines in the Big 12 in a moment, but there was a big day today. The Big 12 announced their awards today. Lexi Kilfoyle, the pitcher for Oklahoma State, was your pitcher of the year in the Big 12. Reese Atwood is your Big 12 Player of the Year, of course, the Texas Slugger. Kinsey Hansen, the Oklahoma catcher, is your Defensive Player of the Year. And then Tegan Cavan wins the Freshman of the Year. Ashton's already got his look there. You just set it up there. That was a one that was very interesting. It was a very deep year in the freshmen, as it always is in the Big 12. Ella Parker of Oklahoma, certainly. Pickering of Oklahoma in the mix. Godwin from Oklahoma State, who I thought picked up a lot of momentum this season and been a big part of the Cowgirls' success. But Cavan ends up edging out Godwin there. Cavan, in fact, was on the first team all-conference. Your thoughts? Let's start there, because obviously that was one that your eyes were rolling a little bit.
Let's do it. I mean, Cavan is a phenomenal player. She had a great season, great first year. Really helped her team a lot. A couple senior players too, like you said. Ella Parker played a huge role in that OU lineup. But I mean, Carly Godwin in particular I mean, she comes in as a freshman, a high recruit, and ends up serving a big role on Kenny Geiske's team. Picked up some steam, like Eric said there, in the last third of the season. Played really well last week against OU. In these bigger series, she has shown up. So that was surprising to me. She still ended up being, a freshman of, the All Big 12 freshman team. Still made that. But it was definitely, I don't know if it was a surprising one, but it was one of the more closer categories than the ones that we saw. Other ones were more chalk, kind of straightforward, knew where they were maybe going to go. But the freshman of the year one was a little bit difficult to call, probably.
That was, I'm curious to see what the comment, certainly the voting was. Fang Nai chiming in agrees with you, Ashton. He feels that Godwin was snubbed. Godwin snubbed there. I think there's some people. I don't know. I saw both of them. They're both really good.
No doubt.
We couldn't share it. Couldn't share.
Yeah, I mean, it always comes down to the voting, I guess. And after all, hey, maybe I'm not one for participation trophies. I don't know about you. And the co-title seems it's always been a little iffy with me, so I'd rather give it to one person anyway.
All right, you're being consistent. I respect that. It's tough because Godwin was such a big part of this Oklahoma State success. You've covered them on a daily basis for your other many hats you wear. How much? And she was, I believe, on the all-conference team. So she was, it was her and Cavan, I believe, were the only freshmen that made the all-conference teams. It just got edged out by Cavan. But Godwin, where would Oklahoma State be without her offensively? So I think that was the argument that a lot of people had for Godwin. Maybe it would sneak in the freshman of the year. Texas with Cavan and Henry. Maybe they canceled each other out. Clearly it didn't. Maybe the fact that Cavan's a big arm in that Stafford, Texas was the difference because teams – I always feel like pitchers get the benefit of the doubt over a hitter maybe sometimes in these awards.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, to answer the first part of that, I mean, where would Oklahoma State be without Carly Godwin? It's kind of hard to say. She's really came in immediately and held down that role at first base, taking it from Michaela Wark, who's moved into the DH role, DP role. And she's played really well there. I think that she's a player that has been really under the radar, but has been consistent. Michaela Wark has. I wouldn't be surprised if she had a great tournament here. But Carly Godwin from day one has been exceptional as a freshman. Like I said, high recruit, but came in, has played well, and she's quite the character too. She's got a country accent. She's from South Carolina. You can tell too. She's a very fun kid to talk to, but she's a great ball player. And they definitely wouldn't have the hitting that they did. I mean, she broke the school's freshman home run record. So she brings a lot of power to that Oklahoma State lineup is what she does.
Obviously, any other things that jumped out at you from the Big 12 announcements? I don't think anybody was surprised. Atwood winning Player of the Year. I agree with that. Setting the records, home run, RBIs at Texas.
Yeah,
Kilfoyle, I think we all knew was the pitcher of the year. I picked it from the preseason, so I'm going to pat myself on the back.
Go Eric.
On that. I did, but she's a big part of this. I don't think Oklahoma State's where they're at without her. She took it to a different level. I think she should be a top 10 National Player of the Year finalist myself. We'll see if that happens. But I know the rest of it, I didn't have a big issue. Anything that jumps out to you, maybe even not necessarily just the awards, but the all-conference picks.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't disagree with you there. I think that they were, for the most part, pretty chalk, kind of what we expected. Those two in particular, Kinsey Hansen, another one. I mean, I think everybody agrees. When you look at that kind of stuff, even the conference teams. I mean, where you could start to get a little bit dissecting between, should this girl have been first team or second team, third team, so on. But when you look at the top and the main awards given out to individuals, there's not much argument there really. I think that, like you said, the best people deserved it. I didn't get to have a preseason pick like you did, but
I didn't vote either. Don't worry, I didn't vote either. We're all in the same boat.
It's okay. Well, I'll let you take the shine in for giving Lexi one there. But
I mean, I just made a public comment on the podcast saying I think she'll win Big 12. That's what I did. But she deserved that as well. So let's see. We got Maranthea Bell said, hey, look, thinks it could have gone either way. Other comments, Kenny has an argument for Coach of the Year, but I have no issues with White winning. So that's a good point. Let's bring that up. Mike White to win Coach of the Year. I don't have an issue with it either. Texas hadn't won a regular season title since 2010. Yeah. They tend to, in these awards, give the Coach of the Year or the Staff of the Year, some conferences do it that way. They tend to give it to the team that wins the league over 9 out of 10 times. So I don't think anybody is surprised, and I don't think anybody really has a big issue with Mike White. That being said, I do think Kenny Gajewski, and I mentioned this when you were on the podcast earlier this week on the In the Circle podcast. It's on the right now. Check it out, archives if you missed it. But this might have been the best job Kenny Gajewski's done in his career at Oklahoma State, which is saying something. You've covered him for a while. Speak of the job he's done this year with this young Oklahoma State team to the point where here we are on Sunday at Bedlam. They had a chance to win the Big 12 if Texas would have lost to Texas Tech. As it is, finished third in the Big 12. Not a lot of people thought they could finish third to be preseason with so many questions about the roster.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Mike White part of it, I mean, I definitely have no issue with Mike White winning too. I think that's totally fine. They won the Big 12 title, regular season title. We're a phenomenal team. But when it comes to Kenny Gajewski, I mean, there was a lot of doubts going in. He had quite the summer. Making the comments about Kelly Maxwell that we really highly reported on.
The O'Collie, for those that are wondering.
Yes, we didn't help his cause there much with having an interesting summer. But, I mean, he had an interesting summer coming into it. Lost a lot of big-time players, Rachel Becker, Kylie Naomi, Cheyenne Factor, Kelly Maxwell, obviously. So there were a lot of question marks, a lot of newcomers on the team, 9 newcomers, whether it be transfers or freshmen. And people didn't really know what to expect from the Cowgirl team out of Stillwater, but I'd agree with Eric on the podcast whenever you guys listened to that. And I said too, I think that it was Kenny's best job. You know, I think that when you look at the question marks that were surrounding the program, the lineup, and where he got them to, having a Bedlam series victory for the first time since '97, and Norman for the first time since '93. Clinching a series against Texas, and not only clinching a series against Texas, but shutting Texas out twice. I mean, those are pretty impressive feats when we start to look at, nitpicking between should it be Mike White, should it be Patty Gazzle, should it be Kenny Gajewski, whoever it may be. I think he did a phenomenal job this year, but very similarly to what we've been talking about, I have no problem Mike White winning another award either.
No doubt about that. Of course, Oklahoma State will begin on Thursday, 11 a.m. Central. Ashton's going to be our time zone expert, so in case I mess up, he'll correct me very much because sometimes I think I'm an East Central. Right. It's very weird. But we do know Oklahoma State will open with BYU. That's a 3-6 game. My question to you, any concern of a Bedlam hangover for Oklahoma State after that? A huge emotional series win in Norman. First time they won Bedlam on the road since 93. Now you're playing a BYU team that beat them earlier this year in Provo and actually hit Lexi Kilfoyle pretty good. Yeah. They can hit Hunter Ava and come Maddie Bejarano. They got a good depth offensively. Pitching's been their question mark, but they're coming with confidence after sweeping Kansas. I got them in the first 4 out right now. So this is a monster game for BYU. They can make a run here. They can get to the NCAA tournament. What's your thoughts? I'm intrigued by this game. I know there's a lot of people I've noticed locally are thinking Bedlam 4, semifinal, which would be an incredible scene here. But I would not sleep on BYU.
Yeah, I'm really on the fence. When we talk about a Bedlam hangover, I can see the yes when it comes to, they just came off a huge series win for the program, huge. And even then, they won 10 of their last 11. They're rolling pretty well. So maybe they come in thinking, like you said, Bedlam 4, that's kind of been the narrative. But they do really do a good job, it seems like, from keeping that outside noise away. Season 3, as Kenny Gajewski calls it, and they want to come in here and solidify an RPI spot because right now they're still 8th in RPI. Yeah. They're number 2 in the polls, but they still want to boost up their RPI ranking and make sure that if they were to get bounced out of here by an early round like the team against BYU, they might not be certain to host a super regional round, which sounds pretty crazy. So I mean, they're going to want to beef up their ranking, you would think, a little bit. That's why I like to lean to maybe no for no Bedlam hangover. because also, like I said, they won 10 out of the last 11 games, are coming in really hot. But that BYU team is dang good, Eric. I mean, they gave OSU some fits. They obviously gave OU some fits, picking up some games.
Yeah, they picked the game from OU.
So, I mean, they know how to play up for sure. And like you said, they're also fighting for their postseason lives, trying to get off that bubble and secure a spot. So both teams are gonna want to win for different reasons.
You're right. Oak State 8 in the RPI. I have them hosting right now in the regionals. I actually have them hosting pretty comfortably. But you're right. You don't want to lose in the opening round of the Big 12 tournament and have things kind of, you don't know what could happen. Yeah. And I wonder, granted, there's a lot of new faces on the team, but you were here a year ago when Oklahoma State lost in the opening round to Kansas, I believe.
Yes.
So, I'm wondering if there's something that's reminded. They were kind of, now last year it's a different team. They were limping down the stretch, and they still got the top 8 seed despite that because of their body of work. Still, I think if you win this game, I think you're comfortably going to be a top 8 seed somewhere. My question to you is, if you're Kenny Gajewski and Kerry Eberle, do you throw Kilfoyle tomorrow, Thursday against BYU, or do you throw one of the other arms and see if you can win against BYU without Kilfoyle and save her for perhaps the semifinal, potentially against Oklahoma?
Yeah, that's really interesting too, because we look at OSU's number 2 pitcher, Ivy Rosenberry, who is going to have an All-American case, but
made all conference too.
Exactly, and so you would think, that'd be pretty easy. We can save Lexi and throw her, but her rib has been really nagging her. It's a fractured rib that she's got, and Kenny Gajewski told us originally that it didn't bother her when she actually threw. It was just in between pitches. But we actually got to talk to Ivy Rosenberry yesterday, and she informed us, no, it does hurt when she throws. It's a rotational thing, a rib right here. I mean, so she is having to take some extra precautions there, but she is a tough son of a gun. So when I think, okay, well, save Lexi Kilfoyle, don't save Lexi Kilfoyle because you don't want to, maybe have Ivy Rosenberry in some pain if you make a deep tournament run. But I would say they probably don't go Kilfoyle and go Rosenberry. Rosenberry did pitch really, really well in 2 starts this past weekend. I also know that Kenny doesn't want to have OU see much more of Kilfoyle, though. So maybe they do throw Kilfoyle tomorrow. Maybe look for her to come in a relief situation against OU if they were to have a Bedlam 4 matchup like we keep talking about. There's multiple different ways to go about it. We even had a surprise start last week with Kyra Aycock. I mean, nobody thought she was going to start, right? And even
that's why I'm wondering maybe she gets to start tomorrow.
Very possible.
Because if you're Kenny and the staff with Rosa, I don't want to say give her the tournament off, but with an injury like that, you're going to need her in the regionals and the supers if you want to get back to the World Series.
Yeah. Do
you consider maybe not using her this week to give her some time to rest? Even though I know that maybe doesn't make it better, but
yeah,
it's a fascinating situation how they manage this staff right now.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it's interesting to note that Ivy Rosenberry and Kenny Gajewski both said that it can't really heal up until she's done and has rest, but it also can't get worse. So she's not going to worsen her injury by pitching more, by throwing more innings by any means, but you probably still do want to give her a rest maybe. But also, I mean, Lexi, they don't want anybody to see her because whether it be OU or whether it be Texas or whether it be Stanford in a month when they're scouting Lexi Kilfoyle for some more innings, they don't want anybody to have any more innings of Kilfoyle, or at least the least amount possible, because they know that at the end of the day, that is the girl that they're going to ride in the circle first.
We'll have more on Oklahoma State BYU tomorrow. We're going to be on an hour before that game right here, same spot. Hopefully, beautiful day. There, I can tell you, I thought about maybe flipping the computer to show you, but maybe we'll do that. Kansas has arrived. They've been here, but now they're dressed. They've just gotten to their dugout. Houston has not gotten to their dugout yet, but the Jayhawks are here, and they're wearing their white tops. They are the home team in this game, who is the 7th seed. So, of course, the winner of this game will take on Oklahoma, who's the 2 seed tomorrow in the second game. What's your thoughts on the Sooners coming in here into their final Big 12 championship tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to say, they just lost the Bedlam series, this huge series. Maybe they might come in stumbling a little bit, but this is the Sooners. This is the dynasty that we've come to know as OU, and it would be unfair to doubt their preparation and to say, just because they lost a big series like Bedlam, that they're not ready to come in here and play a Kansas or whoever they face against Houston, too. But I think it'd be unfair to say that Patty Gusso and co aren't going to come in here ready to roll. Although they had a down weekend, we definitely can see that they can still do like what they did on Sunday, have a 6-run 6th inning where they can bust the game open at any time. So even though that they did struggle, I think that we have to understand that this is still the Sooners. You still look at the top of the lineup, and you still start to see familiar names, familiar faces all across the board. And so this is a familiar stadium too for the Sooners, to where they obviously play here for the Big 12 title every year, Big 12 tournament, but they also obviously are here very often for the Women's College World Series in June.
And they've been playing some games during the regular season.
Yeah.
They hosted Tulsa here earlier in the year, hosted Baylor, and it was announced last week they're going to play Oklahoma State here, and that might become the new trend there in that rivalry.
A one-game affair with Oklahoma State. No Bedlam series, but one game. So yeah, I mean this is a familiar ballpark for them. They know what it takes to obviously win this tournament. They know what it takes to come in here with the right mindset. I mean they're going to be facing a team, whether it's Kansas or Houston, that's going to win tonight. Maybe going to be tired, maybe going to be riding some momentum. Either way, but I think it'd be unfair to doubt the Sooners in any way, because I think that Patty Gass will have them shaped up just right.
Of course, the other Texas will play the winner of Iowa State and Texas Tech. The Longhorns certainly rolling. Interesting to see how they handle being the number 1 seed and the defending regular season champions. The team's gunning for them. That'll be interesting to see how they perform here. I think Texas, with a good showing here in this tournament, likely locks up the number 1 national seed. I think that's what's at stake for them. As we mentioned, tonight's a huge game for Texas Tech. If you're Texas Tech, you want to win this game, get an opportunity at Texas again. If you lose this game, that might have been your last game. And then the late night game tomorrow night, UCF and Baylor. That'll be intriguing. UCF's first ever game here at the formerly the Hall of Fame Stadium. It's now Devon Park. I'm going to have to get used to that. But that's a big game. Baylor has kind of been interesting. Up and down. She started off the first month of the year fantastic in the top 10 of the year, really, and then kind of had some struggles in the midseason. Turn it around late in the year. UCF in pretty good shape to make the NCAA tournament, finishing 5th in the Big 12. I think a win over Baylor pretty much locks them in to the tournament. You always want to have – you can never have enough security, right, in life in general, and certainly in wins. Yeah. And I think that's the story here. And we'll get into more of those matchups tomorrow when we're back on here for our pregame show live here from the stadium. We'll be on before each first game of each day here at the Big 12 Championships right here. And then later in the week, we'll do some post-game shows either from here or from my hotel, because obviously people work here and, we don't want to be here forever. By the way, Houston has walked into the stadium right now. Let's see, I'm going to actually try to gently show you the stadium here, folks. Only here. I'm in the circle. You could get this view. See right there. There is Kansas warming up on the left side. There's Houston showing on the right side. And we'll be starting this game at about 30-some minutes. We'll be off the air way before that, a couple minutes before off the air on that. So hopefully I did that well. If not, I'll get better at it as we get to the week during this week.
We'll try to paint a picture with our words instead, huh?
That's usually what they pay us to do here. Let's see. Question, obviously, from the audience here. Question: who does Oklahoma State? We talked about throwing, considering they're likely to face OU. We discussed that. Let's see. Fire alarm, Elo. Yeah, well, we'll see. I don't think there's fire. Is there fire alarms here?
That's the one thing that I'm actually not quite sure. Okay. I haven't ran into that problem yet. Maybe with you by my side, I ran into that problem.
The fan is referring to a couple of years ago. We did a World Series. Victor covered the World Series, and he was in a hotel, and a fire alarm just went off during that, and he had to actually step away from the hotel. It was a fire drill, and so he has not heard the end of it since. That was 3 years ago. Yeah, to give you an idea how long ago that was. From that standpoint. All right, so the teams are coming in. Kansas is getting the radio booth next to us. They're getting set up. It's a beautiful day for softball. Kansas and Houston, they met in the regular season in Houston earlier this year. It was Kansas that swept Houston, but that was a different Kansas team now back then than it is currently. We'll see how they respond to that. A couple notes nationally here. A marathon game at Auburn, where LSU beats Alabama 3-2 in 14 innings, Ashton. 14 innings. That's a lot of softball. Yep. Not really the most excellent offensive display hitting-wise, but LSU finds a way to win, keeps their hopes alive of perhaps a top 8 national seed. Alabama on the bubble to host as a 15 or a 16 seed. But that's the big story so far today in the SEC, is that LSU-Alabama marathon.
Yeah, we got down there. They got two softball games for the price of one. 14 innings. Not the most exciting 14-inning matchup like you hinted at, but you know what? I guess 2 games of softball, you can't complain. Definitely got their money's worth. So.
Yeah, our colleagues Justin McLeod and Paige Halstead are in Auburn with coverage of the SEC tournament all week. We'll hope to have them on later this week. We were going to have them on this show, except their 7-inning game went into
14-inning game. Yeah, so
a lot of recovery time there. We'll also have coverage of the Pac-12 championship. Jenna Becerra, very own, will be out there. Of course, she'll be part of the broadcast coverage for the early rounds of that Pac-12 tournament in Palo Alto, Stanford. Give me a storyline you're interested in either in the SEC or the Pac-12.
Oh, man. I think when you look at the D1 softball picks, the staff picks, they were pretty split when it comes to the SEC. I believe one of our staff members went to Tennessee, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, Tennessee's been rolling pretty high, and I like to think that they're going to come out of there as a tournament victors, but apparently that's not the consensus among our staff. So maybe not, but I think that Tennessee definitely set up to make a good run in that tournament and even win it. So I was kind of surprised when I saw that only one of our staff members picked Tennessee.
Pretty balanced. Maybe they're thinking somebody can come out of the other side and win it, but that's going to be interesting. Of course, the Pac-12, it's the last Pac-12 as we know it. Ashton, a year from now, we're going to be covering the Big 12 with Arizona State, Utah included.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing in one way because, like you said, the Pac-12 era is ending. You're going to be covering the Big 10 tournament with UCLA and Oregon and all these teams, and even here. I mean, this is Houston's first time. We're seeing them warm up on the field right now, and this is their first time here at this conference tournament. And next year we're going to have, like Eric just mentioned there, Arizona State, and new teams coming into the conference, and it's all going to be new. Conference realignment is just making things wild.
Wild indeed. Give me a couple keys that you think will be the difference for somebody here this week to hoist that Big 12 championship. Well, I meet our good friend Jack Gilligan. Say hi, Jack. This SID, fine SID for Kansas. We're live here on Little Circle Live in our booth here. I'm going to say quick hello, but you give us your keys here. I'll be back in a second.
Will do. Yeah, I mean, when I start to think to the keys, I think it's all about monitoring and managing the big game situations, the high stakes that I talked about earlier. I mean, tonight we're seeing 2 very, very high stakes matchups between Kansas and Houston, obviously, and Iowa State and Texas Tech. 2 of those teams, being the lower ranked teams in both matchups, are fighting just to stay alive in general, while the higher ranked teams in both those matchups are both on Eric Lopez's bracketology. They're bubble teams, so they are fighting to make a spot, because if not, if they were to lose tonight, they would need some help from other people maybe to even make it into the field to keep their postseason hopes alive, right? So it's all about monitoring and managing those big games, the high stakes situations, being prepared. There's obviously the teams in the conference at the upper echelon that have been around the block more, know what it takes more to win this title. But I mean, we've seen it more that there's a lot of parity within this conference, right? There's the front runners for sure, but there are teams that have been able to knock down the front runners throughout the season, whether it's an Iowa State, whether it's a BYU.
Very good. All right, I want you to meet my good friend Jack. He's out by the door. Go say hello to him in the meantime. Ashton here. Folks, we're getting people together live. This is what I love. This is fun. This is what we do. So Jack will be obviously Kansas SID. Dan Hamilton will be down there in 11 Ashton. You got 2 of the best of the best.
Lucky me.
All right, that's Jack joining us. You never know who's going to show up live, Ashton.
Yeah.
You're going to learn that this week.
I love it. It keeps us on our toes, right, Eric? But sometimes in life you got to ad-lib things. You got to roll with the punches, and that's what we do here on D1 softball. So
there's no doubt on there. Both teams warming up now. As we're getting set, we're going to probably sign off in about 10, 15 minutes and get you set to watch this game. Other notable stories from today: McNeese gets upset in their first game of the Southland tournament.
Yeah.
I know people have been asking about that. I think McNeese has to win the tournament. I don't believe there's room for them to get an at-large. Their resume's not that strong this year compared to past years.
Yeah.
So that could be a story to develop there. Is Alabama safe still to host? That's another question out there. I think in a normal year they wouldn't host. But the question is, who's going to take that next hosting spot? That's been the issue. Florida State lost 2 out of 3 to Syracuse. So did Virginia Tech. Washington lost twice to Utah. Lost 2 out of 3 to Stanford. Nobody seems to want this fifth, potentially last host spot this year, Ashton. It's really weird, very down this year.
Yeah, because I mean, this is kind of how it's set up this year. It's not really who loses. It's about who's going to come take the spot, who's going to win the big game, who's going to win a couple big games and come take a spot. And I think that's interesting. Whenever we look at the top 16 and then even more so the top 8, again, the supers, there's always a couple teams that it's not necessarily that they lose the big game. It's that other teams don't win the big games to take their spot. And so Alabama, you would think, would usually be on the outside, but they could be on the outside. They don't have as good of a resume, and as good win losses as they sometimes do down there in Tuscaloosa. But they still have a good enough season to where they should be in contention. And if things shape up their way this weekend, conference tournament weekend, then they can definitely be in a good spot to still host. Surprisingly, honestly, in some ways.
Right now, I have Alabama 15, could drop to 16, could drop out, depending if somebody steps up and takes it. And here's the thing, if Alabama's a 15 or a 16, if I'm correct on that, that's going to line them up to possibly play Tennessee or Texas or Oklahoma.
Now, wouldn't that be interesting? Future SEC rivals, we can start to build the rivalries early. It's kind of like we were talking about earlier. I mean, just like how we said about the Pac-12, about the Big Ten, about how everything's starting to reshape. I think about this, OU, Texas, 2 softball giants, not only nationally, but within the conference of the Big 12. This is their last time here at OG Field, Devon Park, as the stadium is now called, and as we're going to start getting used to, right, Eric? But I mean,
you will. You're going to be here more often than me.
But I mean, isn't that ridiculous that we could have a preview of what's to come in the SEC,
True.
right? And it's crazy how much the landscape of college softball is going to change.
Right. No doubt about it. So we're about a few minutes away, and then we'll probably sign off because Ashton's going to show me where the food is. And then we're going to sit back and watch the doubleheader. We are going to have post-game coverage on D1 softball. Let's tell Ashton, tell the audience what they can expect this week from here at the Big 12 Championship.
Oh, a lot. I mean, although we have coast coverage practically, we are right here in the middle of America, right here in the heart of softball, the national softball capital of the world, making sure that we have video content. We're going to have all kinds of post-game videos. Eric and I will be doing stand-up videos with coaches or players of teams, getting their thoughts on these high-stakes, high-level, high-octane games. And then on the writing side, I'm going to be handling that here in Oklahoma City, while Eric handles what he's best at on camera, the voice, getting it going. I'm going to handle the writing things. I'm going to stay off camera sometimes and provide some written content here from the National Softball Capital of the World. But otherwise, we're going to have more pregame, postgame shows just like this. And Eric and I are going to try and let you guys know what's going on here, because we should, especially as the days go on, have just some incredible softball.
This feels like a tune-up, right? It's like it's an appetizer.
Yeah.
Because Thursday's going to be wild with 4 games going on here, and then you got the quarterfinals in the SEC. The Pac-12 gets going. I mean, Thursday could be one of the great days of the year in softball. It's so much action across the country. I mean, the Big Ten has a big game coming up with Indiana, Northwestern, et cetera. That's what it's signed up to be. But this is not a bad appetizer.
Yeah, I mean, we start to learn too, kind of like how we talked about with Alabama, for example, dropping a game there, needing other teams to lose, and if they do win, then they'll move into those positions. As this tournament goes on, we can then kind of start to fall in line as to what we may see in the national landscape, who may end up hosting, who may end up not hosting. There is a lot on the line, but the Big 12, with it being a day behind the SEC tournament, we're going to get to figure out some storylines and some other things that are going on as this tournament keeps going on. So
Kansas warming up in a must-win situation for the Jayhawks to get back on the positive side of their play and positive side of the bracket against the Houston Cougars. That's coming up here in about 20 minutes. We're going to sign off here in a couple of minutes because we're going to have more people we're going to be introduced to and introduce. But we're going to be on all week. As the week goes on, we'll have longer shows, probably an hour long, right before first pitch. This one we're going to be a little early. But this is kind of a nice taste there. Final thoughts, Ashton, as we're getting set here on the eve of the first 2 games in the Big 12 tournament.
I think the overarching theme when we start to think about this tournament is something I touched on, is that we're seeing the beginning of a new era and the end of the old era of Big 12 softball. We're seeing a new team, even like Houston in this first game, in its first time in Oklahoma City for a conference tournament, right? But then we're also seeing the last of Texas and OU in Oklahoma City for a conference tournament, and it's so interesting how this is going to play out. I think that in one way it's almost like you're breaking up with your old boyfriend or girlfriend, but at the same time your new boyfriend or girlfriend is right there waiting for you. And so I think that we're going to get a good mix of not only what the Big 12 is going to be missing, potentially, but then also what the Big 12 is going to be bringing in and the potential of what this new league is going to look like.
It is. There is not a cloud to be found at this stadium. We are set for a doubleheader. Kansas and Houston coming up at the top of the hour, followed by Iowa State and Texas Tech. Go to ESPN Plus. That's where they have all the games on. I know Natasha Watley is in the building.
Yep.
To be part of the
Big
podcast.
time.
Hello. That's one of my goals is to find her at some point this week. But that should be a lot of fun. And we'll have coverage here all week and on D1Softball.com, as well as on In the Circle YouTube channel. We're going to have some of the press conferences there as well. And then obviously social media platforms. We'll hear from the SEC folks if they ever finish. They may never finish.
We'll see. We might get a 28-run inning in the second game. We might just double it and pass it to the next one.
They're still in the second game of the day, to give you an idea. And it's, what is it? Missouri's up.
Final now.
Oh, they just won 3-1 over Ole Miss. So Missouri advances. Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss is going to get in. They won against Kentucky last night. They're probably going to be in the tournament. I think the SEC is going to end up getting everybody in. But Missouri, that's a big win. So Missouri and LSU, two teams in the mix for that top 8 national seed, both win their first game of the SEC tournament in that one. LSU will play Tennessee tomorrow. Missouri will play Arkansas in the 4-5 matchup. That's the story of the SEC. Missouri with the 3-1 win over Ole Miss. Any other scores of note nationally here as we take a look here? Obviously, Auburn and Georgia is going to get underway soon. And then South Carolina, Mississippi State will cap it off there in the SEC for them if they stay on schedule there. ACC, Boston College beat Syracuse. Nothing noteworthy there in the ACC. Indiana won their first game. See, if you go to the Big Ten, they started their day. Penn State was playing, has the schedule to play Maryland. That's a very big bubble game for the Nittany Lions.
Wow.
And what do you got? Indiana, we got Penn State, Maryland going to play tonight. Illinois, Minnesota, 7-7 in the 7th. Indiana beat Purdue. Indiana will play Northwestern in a game that they must have to probably get into the field will be the Hoosiers. So the Big Ten going on in Iowa. And then the Pac-12 will have their playing game tonight in Palo Alto, and then a full day's coverage tomorrow. So that's the story here. We're going to sign off for now because, again, Ashton's going to show me where the food is. And I'm a rookie. He's the vet. But keep it here on In the Circle. We'll have more content. Look for our post-game coverages throughout the night, throughout the week on D1 Softball and socials, as well as on In the Circle SB on the YouTube. For Ashton Slaughter, I'm Eric Lopez, Cameo Jack Gilligan. We thank you for tuning in on this special In the Circle live from Oklahoma City. We'll talk to you soon.